32 of snooker's elite will descend on Sheffield's legendary Crucible Theatre. For 17 days they will battle it out over the green baize. A grueling test of character, accuracy, and pure skill. Hundreds of millions of fans will watch from all over the world, whose grit and determination will prevail. Face to face in a best of 35 frame final, fighting for the title every player dreams of. There will be only one winner. Betfred, proud sponsors of the World Snooker Championship.
Hello, welcome to the Crucible. We are delighted to be in the Champions Lounge for this live Twitter Q&A. We've dragged Willie Thorne out of the commentary box. We've got Alan McManus, twice a semi-finalist here. He's done brilliantly to get through the first round again. It's his good mate, Stephen Maguire. He's facing Ali Carter, of course, so he's been off the practice table. And we've got John Higgins, 4 times a champion. He's come through his first round match and is very much looking forward to taking on Ricky Walden. Right, guys, thank you very much for joining us. If you are interested in posing a question to the 3 guys, send us a tweet. It's at World Snooker 1, and please put the hashtag CrucibleQA. Right, first of all, before we get into the nitty-gritty and the juicy questions, Willie, I'll start with you just because you're alongside me. What an incredible championship it's already been. We'll get the thoughts of Alan and John in a minute, but first time since 82 that 3 of the top 4 seeds have gone by the end of the first round. We know the standards are improving, but this has been incredible.
It's been very, very different. And I've got to be honest, I mean, there's conjecture now whether the qualifiers should be just before the tournament, because the seeds are saying that the players are, in practice and have got 3 good matches under their belt. But in saying that, obviously they're seeded for one reason, because they're usually better than the people, that rank lower than 16. The matches it's been good standard, to be perfectly honest. We've had some great stuff. Michael Holt, for instance, I mean, he's changed his coach. He's gone with the legend that's Terry Griffiths. That seems to have improved him an awful lot. Mark Allen's through, and of course Alan McManus has come back to the good times again now, and it'd be nice to see how he proceeds in the tournament. But it's been great.
Well, Alan, you came through the 3 qualifying rounds. I had a chat with you after your third round win over Jimmy, and Jimmy had played really well against Stuart Carrington, I think, in the second of the qualifiers. So, you're in a great position to tell us what it's like coming through the qualifiers and bringing a decent standard to the Crucible. Is there much mileage in the belief that you guys, whilst you may flourish in the first and second round, that the fatigue of already having come through 3 best of 19s to get here means it's very unlikely for a qualifier to come through and win the championship? Or is that complete rubbish and you're in the groove, you're in the flow, and it doesn't matter because that prize is so huge, if you're good enough to win it, you'll make it through?
Yeah, I'm a believer actually that this fatigue thing I don't buy into. I know Peter Ebden's been pretty vocal about it, and maybe 1 or 2 others, but for me, there's time enough to be tired after you play snooker. When you're down here, the adrenaline's running, and you just want to play. The fact remains, and I think it is a fact, and it's pretty obvious, that the top 16, probably one of them is going to win it for the simple fact they're the best players. That's just common sense. So, 3 matches is pretty tough at qualifying, and it can be taxing. You come here only, I think I got home for about 2 nights and came back down, but really it doesn't make any difference. It's nice and relaxed here. We've got the nice lounge, and we can go for dinner and bit of practice, keep loose, and everyone knows it's going to be a long haul of an event, so that's what it is, yeah.
And John, any surprise for you that we lost, the likes of Bingham and Murphy and Neil Robertson? Because I suppose in the one sense, it's not really a shock that Stuart Bingham went out. No disrespect to him, but he was up against Ali Carter, who, for so many years has been in the top 16 and has been in 2 finals. But were you surprised that Sean went out and Neil Robertson last night to Michael Holt?
I think that the most eyebrow-raising result, I suppose, was probably Michael Holt, because I think Michael's been here for many years. I think Sean losing to Anthony, now Anthony's improving year in, year out now, and he showed us what he's capable of last year. But I think Michael's been here so many years, and he's not really had the best of times here. And for him to come through and beat Neil Robertson, who was many people's tip to probably win the event, and the way he done it, because Neil didn't play that bad, I don't think, the frames that I've seen. So every credit, I would say Michael Holt was a standout performer, I'm sure, in the first round.
Right, we'll come back to you in just a moment, Willie. I've got a question for Alan. Please get them coming in. We'll put them on the screen here. I asked you this live on the BBC, and now we're in this great forum where we've got a bit more time to go into it in depth. It was really interesting watching you when the ref was re-racking in between frames, you and Stephen Maguire. You're really good mates. Stephen's had a tough couple of years here. How difficult is it to play a guy that you care about as a mate and whose game you know inside out, because you're seeing each other at the club a couple of days a week? It looked like you two were really good mates, which you are, but it was quite weird in a way because it was a World Championship first round match and you were having a chat as if you had a little can of Iron Brew on the table in between you, and it was just a bit of a knockabout for fun. But how difficult is it to put those friendships aside and get over the line against a really good mate?
In the end, it's not really that difficult. I actually think it's nice, as we had a chat after qualifying. I think you asked me who I maybe had an inkling I would get in the draw, and I said I would actually quite like to play Stevie or John, but not so much John because we played here before. I hadn't played Stephen, and it's nice because you're out there for probably 6, 7, 8 hours. It's nice to be in company with someone who you enjoy sitting. You can have a chat at the end of frame. Actually, the first 2 or 3 frames after the frame was finished, we were having a chat, but then the serious stuff kind of beds in and you kind of just keep your distance. But it's nice to play a mate. I mean, it really is. I played John. It's been similar before, isn't it, John? I mean,
I was delighted I never drew Alan because I've lost 2 first rounds against Alan, so I was glad Stephen came out with him. So, but yeah, I mean, we've played before, and as Alan says, it's great to play your mate, but also it's tough in a way because you feel like having a talk, but sometimes you don't know who should start. Who should
basically
start
there's a kind of an unwritten rule in this game in the practice room with the players that you put friendship or camaraderie, you put it aside for the 2 days or the 1 day that you're playing, and regardless of the result, you're mates again. You buy each other a beer and get on with it because that's going to happen.
In the olden days, it never really happened. I mean, if you stood next to Steve Davis, obviously you both played Steve Davis many times as I have. I mean, he wouldn't say a word to you. Steve, it wouldn't even look at you. I mean, he was, and Stephen Hendry. I mean, you could never get a nod in the desert out of Stephen Hendry. That's how. I mean, he wouldn't look at you at all. It's different now. I mean, they practice together now. Years ago, you didn't practice with other pros. They're on tour all the time now, so you're seeing each other regularly. I mean, they're not strangers anymore, and I think that's why we're getting results now, because these young players now are playing these top players day in, day out. They're not frightened of them anymore. They're not frightened of John playing John or Robertson or Selby or O'Sullivan.
Actually, that's a really good point that Willie's making. I'll give you an example of it. The first time I ever played Jimmy White, I actually met him for the first time ever the night before I played him. And I played it was the quarters of the UK. I mean, people would scarcely believe that now. Because of the PTC culture, you're used to being in the same room as top guys and seeing them, and then you get used to them and you get familiar. As Willie said, the Nugget and Hendrick, there was a mystique about them. And it was kind of deliberate, wasn't it, in a way that they made this?
I think the reason as well, I mean, the mistake about them is the fact that they were elusive. I mean, as John knows and Alan knows, you've got to be very, very dedicated. Obviously, it's a bit different now. They're playing 30, 40 tournaments a year. It's going to change again, I think, next year. They're not going to play quite as many tournaments. So we may see now the young players coming through suddenly I'm playing Ronnie O'Sullivan, I'm playing Alan McManus, I'm playing John Higgins, and be a little bit frightened. This last 2 or 3 years, they've been playing them, 2 or 3 times a year.
Was it when you first started on the circuit, John? You come through a great range of champions from that very small age bracket. You and Mark Williams and Ronnie. Was it intimidating when you first came onto the circuit? Were you in the presence of these legends, thinking, "Oh my God, is he even going to speak to me?" Or did you get the feeling when you first came on that it was actually a very friendly environment?
Yeah, don't embarrass me, John. Now, just say it.
No, it was a friendly environment. I mean, I think you mentioned those 2 guys, Davis and Hendry. They were the standout players, and maybe, as you said, it was maybe put on a little bit that they want to keep themselves a little bit aloof from the other players. But other players like Willie. Now, when I first met Willie and I played Willie first couple of years as a professional, it was brilliant because I've watched them on the TV for so many years, and then to actually be on playing them on the table. It was brilliant. It's what you dreamed of doing, and then when you come through to play them, it was a great time to come through and play all the top players. But I really enjoyed it. I mean, it wasn't as if you were frightened to play them. You just really enjoyed it, and took it in your stride and hope you produced a good game to give them a good game. So it was good.
Brilliant. Right, let's get to the Twitter questions then. We've had a tweet from Rob Francis. Thanks very much, Rob. Don't forget it's at World Snooker 1. Put the hashtag CrucibleQA. This is a question for the Angles. He says, Alan, with so many seeds out in round 1, how does that affect the pressure you're feeling? I guess he's asking, does it feel as though you're under more pressure because more big names have gone out, or less?
Really, it makes no difference. I mean, each player will be aware of their little section of the draw. I happen to be in a little section with the 4 times here, John. The winner of both our games meet to get to the one table situation in the end. Other than that, you don't really look around you. But I think it's been good, that a few of the top seeds have tumbled. I think every year, you coming into the World Championship, a lot of people think, the top 16 are all going to win. It never happens because there's depth of quality all over the tour now. I mean, the top 16, you could make a case that any one of them could conceivably win the World Championship. Not so guys outside it, but the depth of quality is there where every qualifier is capable of winning a match at least,
On a more general tournament-wide level, rather than specifically the World Championship, do you think, John, it's always a good idea to study a draw when you arrive at a tournament and think about who you're going to get in each round? Or actually, is it much better to simply, it's a bit of a cliche, you play the opponent that you're up against and try not to think too deep into a tournament?
Yeah, no, I think you shouldn't even look at the draw nowadays. Although we all do look at the draw, we have to look at the draw. But yeah, there's no point in looking at the draw. I can even say now, my own situation with winning some of the world titles, that I've had really, really tough draws, and you've managed to come through because you just knew you were getting yourself ready for every game. Was a tough game. I played O'Sullivan and Williams and Trump and Selby and Murphy, and they're all great players, and you just concentrate, you go in and you give your all, and then hopefully you get to that winning frame score before the other guy. So it's very difficult.
I must admit, in my era, I mean, obviously there wasn't the strength in depth, when I first turned pro in 76, and I used to look at the draw and think, semi-final without a problem. Then all of a sudden, I played the first round. I'm driving back down the motorway, having got beat. I mean, looking at the draw is bad. I was a terrible draw looker when I saw the draws, but I have lost to some bad players in my time.
And we all have. Yeah.
Okay, question for any of the three of you. Quite an interesting one from Mitchell. Thanks very much, Mitchell. Do you ever find it difficult sitting shoulder to shoulder with your opponent at the Crucible? I guess from the perspective of the onlookers and the viewers, it does seem as though you guys are sitting on the 2-table setup. You're so close together. Is that uncomfortably close?
It's not uncomfortable, is it? No. There's a sort of an invisible wall there when the guys sit, but because as John says, you don't really say much. I mean, for example, if the table's poor or happens to be bouncing or not responding so well, there's an unwritten rule again. You don't really want to say to the guy because, are you getting in his head or are you trying to upset his? So you just kind of, I'll do my thing, he'll do his thing, and you deal with it, get on with it.
Can I just say, in our era, John, when I first started playing, there was smoking, and being a non-smoker, I mean, I played Alex Higgins one year, and he got three cigarettes all around the ashtray, all burning. And with it being a non-smoker, now and again, that was a little bit uncomfortable. And John doesn't smoke. Did you have trouble with the smokers in your day early on?
No, but I don't think I actually played here when it was smoking.
Okay.
I think it was actually finished.
Is that how old I am?
You weren't allowed to smoke. See, and I've got the grey hairs as well, Willie. But yeah, I mean, that must have been difficult now, playing someone that if you don't smoke and the smoke getting in your eyes, and I'm sure maybe Alex was doing it on purpose as well when he knew you did smoke, so it would have been difficult, yeah. But there is more space, isn't there, Alan? I think there's more space than the people back home actually think.
Yeah.
It's not really very tight.
Strangely enough, the only difficulty, but the small thing is when you come to the table and he goes to sit down, you've got to sort of do a little pirouette and sort of slide round the corner and try and get out. That's the only thing in it you can bump in. But there's the common courtesy out there is you wait on each other moving to the side, and so it's fine.
Can I just ask you two guys something? I mean, how difficult it is to play in an arena where the crowd are right on top? Have you always enjoyed coming to the Crucible? Is it the home of snooker for you, or is it a place you don't enjoy playing?
I think I couldn't say I've always loved it, because the very first time I qualified here, I played Angles here and he beat me 10-3 quite convincingly, and I said after it, I said, I don't know all the fuss is about. It's one of the worst arenas I've ever played in. But I think once I come back now, the years after that, and I managed to win a match or two, then I began to realise how special the place was. So,
do you still get a buzz, John, coming down the Parkway every year now, coming into Sheffield?
Not so much, Willie, because we come down so often to the qualifiers at Barnsley and different places, so you're always on the M1 or the A1, whereas it used to always be you only done it once a year, and it was a great feeling knowing that you were coming down to play in the World Championship.
It's funny, I mean, I'm sure me and John, obviously coming from Scotland, the same drive, that you have the same thing every year, didn't you, for a number. It's like you drive out the Parkway and then you hang sharp left in the M1 in it, and you think, here we go again, and it's a year, it's every year one thing happens. It's a small thing, but it's nice, it's habit. I remember I used to read, I think Steve Davis used to walk in the same door or something back in the day or whatever, and that's what it does.
Well, I've got to be honest, I've not played now competitive snooker for like best part of 18, 20 years, and still coming down the Parkway, I get a buzz. Well, home of snooker,
and even from the perspective of being the MC, there's no finer place to work. And I guess one of the interesting things about the Crucible, it's the physical layout of the arena, isn't it? I mean, you guys are, your feet would be about 3.5 feet below the first line of spectators, and it is a unique arena for that. Certainly in terms of the noise, when I hear the roars for you guys, you can feel the applause coming from three very distinct directions. It's a unique arena, as well as the history that the building has. The actual layout of the playing area is incredible.
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick thing as well. I was in the arena yesterday watching Mark Allen, who's going to join us in playing Mitchell Mann. I went in to watch a few frames. The thing that I love in general about a lot of it doesn't change. It's the same as it was 25 years ago. Literally everything, the seats, the little chairs in the boxes, the table's the same, the setup, the wall, and it's like a time machine, isn't it? It's like it never changes, and we love that, It's because every other tournament we play in, that's different, or the tables are different, or the lighting's different. Everything's the same here, and the players love it. Yeah.
I was going to say to both guys, I mean, some players now are saying that maybe 1 year it should move away from the Crucible. I'm an advocate it should stay at Crucible forever. Are you both advocates of that?
Yeah, for sure. I would go as far as to say, and this is just a personal opinion, if it ever moved away from the Crucible, even if it went to actually anywhere, I wouldn't regard it as a World Championship.
Wow.
Good point.
So how strong are your feelings on that, John? Having won here 4 times.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I don't think you could ever replicate. I know that I think they've done it in Beijing. They've tried to replicate the Crucible, but I don't think you can replicate now the history that this place has produced over the years. So no, I think it should always stay here as well.
And that view would be mirrored by all the journalists in the press room. I've only done 9, nowhere near as many as you guys, and even just from the journalist perspective, it's got its idiosyncrasies, the Crucible, but every corridor and every corner of the building just seems to have a memory that's intrinsically linked to the sport, and it's part of what's made snooker great.
And the thing is with the Crucible as well, backstage, it's not nice. I mean, the playing arena is wonderful, but if you're bringing friends to have dinner or drinks, you've got nowhere to take them. It was great years ago when we used to have the tobacco sponsorship sometimes, and they had the big marquees out in there where you could take guests and that. But backstage here, it's not good. The practice facilities are not good. I mean, where would you ever get practice facilities where they've had a studio right next to you and things like that? That's tough.
It's all part of the flavour. Yeah. Right, please keep your questions coming in. We could keep this going for hours. Just going to pick a few. A fairly obvious but quite an interesting question from Petya. The player that you guys would always have rather avoided, or rather avoid in the present tense for the two of you still playing. Who do you never fancy?
Are we talking the guys who are in this tournament, or just in history?
In general. Any player.
I mean, the hardest player I've ever played against is Steve Davis. When he was, I played him probably just after he was at his best, and Stephen Hendry had taken over at number 1. But I called him PlayStation because he had every ball on the table seemed to be under his spell. That's the way he played. I'm sure Willie and John will remember. It was as if he floated the white, and he was always like there in position. We play for there, he's there, and he didn't have to hit the ball hard, or he just seemed to have the whole table under his spell, as I say, and he was incredibly difficult.
Talking about Steve Davis as well, I mean, these two guys and Steve Davis, they could beat you when they're playing bad. Now, none of them, the attacking players, I mean, if Hendry played bad, you'd beat him. I mean, if all these young guys play bad, They had a game, and Davis was mustard at it, wasn't he? You could have him in all sorts of trouble, and he'd just carry on and carry on. He might not make a 50 break for 3 frames, but all of a sudden you find yourself you've lost 2 of the 3 frames. And, you know, to win a game when you're playing not at your best is essential in today's game, and these guys have got it.
So what about you, John? Who do you always look at in a draw and think, oh, right, okay, this is going to take every ounce I've got to get over the line here?
I mean, to say that the hardest players, you'd have to say someone like Sullivan, who you've played over the years, or obviously Stephen Hendry. But my hardest player I've always felt coming up against was Peter Ebdon. I always felt as if Peter always, played really, really good against me, and he was such a tough competitor. And he played shots that no other player would play against you. Now, whereas I could play 99 out of 100 other professionals, and I could look at the table and I could try and gauge which shot they were going to play. With Peter, you just never knew which shot he was going to play, and it was quite difficult to get yourself into the match sometimes now when he was playing different shots. But still, some fantastic shots he was playing, and he's always played very well. But Peter Ebdon was always very difficult for myself, and still is to this day.
Just again to touch on that, it's a strange thing as well we have in our game. We play each other so often now, Rob, but Mark's going to join us quite soon. I think Mark Allen, and we'll ask him about this, I think he has problems with Mark Joyce, who not a lot of people will know. Everyone in the game knows, but I think, but then again, someone else will play Mark Joyce 6 times and beat him 6 times, but it's like John having trouble with Peter Ebdon. He'll have a guy who he always loses again, so that's just the nature of it.
It's amazing I have bogeymen. I mean, I only played Doug Mountjoy 3 times and lost to him 3 times. I played Terry Griffiths about 10 times and I beat Terry 9 out of 10 or something, yet Terry always used to beat Mountjoy. So you can never really game the form line. You just have some players that you don't fancy playing. Or some players you go down and think, well, I'm bound to beat him, and then all of a sudden, like I said, you're driving back down the motorway a few hours later.
Just a final question for John. By the way, Liang Wenbo's taken a 6-3 lead into the second session of the Battle of the Left-Handers. Remember, their practice partners. Liang beat Judd in the UK Championship en route to a cracking final against Neil Robertson, but Judd's the man in form, having won in China, but he's got a few frames to claw back there. Last question for you, John, before you go and we get the pistol in the hot seat alongside Alan. A question about people's mental strengths, because that seems to me one of the great aspects of your game. It takes me back to the match when you were 9-5 down against Mark Williams at the UK Championship. Do you think a mental fortitude is something that is learnt and enhanced, or is it instinctively in a player or not in a player? Because you take that's the most prestigious title to win outside of this one here in Sheffield, and Mark was a double world champion at that time. And somehow or other, you managed to play it frame by frame and come back from nowhere, really, and beat him. Is that inbuilt, or do you work on a mental strength like that?
It must be inbuilt, because, just personally speaking, I've never worked on my mental strength or whatever, so it must obviously be inbuilt. It's one of the things that it's difficult. There is some times where your mind is in turmoil in certain matches. I've had it here, I've had it at other venues, but then there's other times where even when you are behind, you've got an inner strength, or you've got a calmness about yourself, thinking there is a chance for you to come back. And as I say, as long as you can feel that, obviously there's a chance for you to come back. But there has also been times where your head is in a jam jar and you know there's no way you are coming back, because that's just what, especially here at the Crucible, this arena can get to you like no other arena can get to you.
I must admit it's definitely inbuilt as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I was terrible. If somebody had a fluke against me, it'd take me 2 frames to forget about it. I mean, some players can go to the table and play the next shot as the very first shot. I was terrible. I mean, there's so many players like me who kind of, everything around them's going wrong, they'll notice it. The real champions of this world you've got to have a good temperament to win at snooker. You can't just keep going through without a good temperament. These 2 guys have got great temperaments.
And you as well, Alan, have that ability to put the bad moments behind you.
I mean, it's funny. Me and John have spoke about this probably quite a few years ago, but we spoke about when it's probably at the Crucible, the longer matches and you're miles behind, and part of you wants to jack it in, innit? We spoke about this, didn't we?
Yeah.
But there's a small part of you says, no, I'm going to dig in here. I'm going to dig my heels in, because something might happen. I've always said, when you're behind and have facing a big deficit in a match, the only way you'll guarantee getting beat is if you chuck the towel in. But if you keep trying, you won't win a lot of those games, but you might win 1 out of about 50 of them. 1 out of 50 is better than none out of 50. And the one game that you do win, you might go on and have a really good tournament. So you should try it all times out there. Yeah.
Brilliant, great attitude.
I think that was proven obviously with Neil Robertson a few years ago, wasn't it? When he was 11-5 down to Martin Gould, and apparently booked out his hotel room.
Yeah.
But there obviously must have still been an inner belief in him that still thought, although he'd booked out his hotel room, he probably thought, no, I might actually want to try and book back in there tonight. And he obviously came back, he beat Martin Gould, and then he went on and won the world title. So yeah, it must be inbuilt. Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah.
John, we've taken up loads of your time. Thanks very much. As John exits, good luck against Ricky. That's going to be an amazing match. Yeah. Mark the Pistol Allen comes in fresh after beating Mitchell Mann. Great session from Mark today.
And what do you think about Mark Joyce, by the way?
he off camera, he enjoyed that question. Not.
Anything.
Okay. Well, Mark, as you've just sat in the hot seat, so nice to get that first round match out the way, and just on a personal level, great confidence to come here off the back of the Players' Championship win. Is it a different feeling winning a ranking event over this side of the world as opposed to the ones in China?
Yeah, it definitely is. You can win sort of all around the world, but you want to win in your home turf and in front of millions of fans that have always followed the sport, tradition of the sports here in the UK. And you don't, as much as I've done okay in other events, it's the majors over here that we want to really do well in.
Okay, actually leading on from that, question for all three of you, but we'll start with Mark. So I think I might know the answer to this one, but it's up to you to determine. What's the best atmosphere that you've played in? I mean, of the matches I've seen with you, that incredible UK Championship final at the back end of 2011 in York against Judd was very, very special. Is that the most ferocious, inspiring, noisy atmosphere you've experienced in a match or not?
It's up there, but strangely I have to pick a match that I lost. It was actually here. It was against John Higgins in the semi-final. I remember being way behind and sort of made a match of it in the end and got close, and the atmosphere whenever I was making my comeback I'll sort of never forget. Even though I didn't go on to lose that match, take so many positives and so many great memories from it.
What about you, Alan? What's the most inspiring or ferocious atmosphere that you can remember experiencing?
Strangely enough, I'm just thinking back to my sort of earlier years. I think one of the biggest matches in anyone's season is the quarterfinals of the World Championship, because it's the game to get. Look, Mark's one of the best players in the world and has been for like at least a decade now. But I think how many times have you played? Once. He's played in the semi-finals. And the same as Ding. Ding's only played once and won. It's a massive thing, isn't it? For every player, it's the ambition to play semi-finals here. And so the quarterfinals. I played Davis. I think it was 13-11. At a game with JP, it was 13-12 in the quarters, I think it was. That's as far as being tense, I remember those.
What about you, Willie?
I know Alan's played there, but I'm not sure that obviously. I was just thinking about the Wembley Conference Centre. I mean, 2,000 people there when you're playing against Jimmy White or Steve Davis. I mean, that was terrible. I mean, obviously when you're playing in London, they want the London people to win, and playing a safety shot, if the White's going anywhere near the middle pocket, they'd be shouting, "Get in and get in." This undoubtedly is the home of snooker. I never played great here. I mean, it was a venue that I loved it, but I never had my best stuff here. I've had a few quarterfinals, but never played great. But the Wembley Conference Centre, that was frightening. I mean, 2,000 people, that was tough.
I remember my first match I watched when I was younger. I was like 15 years of age. A few of us travelled over from Northern Ireland, and it was at the Wembley Conference Centre, and nearly seen a 147 in the very first frame that I'd ever seen a professional snooker. And I turned to my mate, and he was another very good amateur, like junior at the time. Said to him, "We have a lot of work to do," sort of thing, because Paul Hunter beat Stephen Lee 6-1, and I'll never forget it, and he just never missed a ball. I remember saying to him, like, we've a long way to come if we're going to do anything in this game, but the atmosphere there was electric. I watched Jimmy White playing Stephen Hendry, and like you saying, Willie, the abuse that Stephen had to take, but he dealt with it. He's probably water off a duck's back to Stephen Hendry at the time, and went on, and I think I'm nearly sure he got to the final there. I think Mark Williams might have beat him, but the abuse he took that night was unheard of, really, now.
The Masters, such a special tournament. And actually, there was an announcement by Barry Hearn earlier today. If you haven't had a chance to click onto the World Snooker website, you may not have yet read that we're coming up to the 10th anniversary of the passing of Paul Hunter. And from January 17 onwards, the Masters Trophy is going to be named the Paul Hunter Trophy for forever, as it should be. So a little bit of nice news there to remember a great player. Right, question from Rob, not me, another Rob. It's a question to Alan. As you can see on the screen there, what do you consider the best match you've ever played here?
Here?
Is that to Mark, or is it?
Well, let's say both of you.
The best match I've ever played here would probably be against JP, 13-12. I think I was 11-7 down and managed to win. So, I've not won that many matches here. I've won a few, but that one kind of stands out. I think it was maybe the quarterfinals as well. So it was, to be 11-7 down and win any game here, as Mark would tell you, is a massive thrill, especially against a guy as tough as JP, who Willie obviously knows all about. Yeah.
I mean, my one, twofold really. Obviously, when you beat somebody that, when Terry won the World Championship, I came back and beat him the next round, and when Spencer was at his height, you beat the good players here. That's the thing. But one that reminds me of like the low times you get at the Crucible. I remember playing Alan in I think maybe the first round or second round match, and I had to beat him to stay in the top 16. That was pressure I'd never felt before. Because at the time, top 16 was so important because it kept you, in every tournament you seeded, you get here at the World Championship. And of course now, obviously, we've seen it with Ding and people like that. Being in the top 16 is just essential. And I remember Alan beating me and I was going home and just felt distraught. I thought the world had come to an end. And that's what the Crucible can get you. The tension here is like no other place.
Yeah, a bit like Willie said there, I had a match here myself against Matthew Stevens where I needed to win to stay in the top 16, 9-6 down and in a terrible place mentally, and managed to scrape through 10-9. So one of my better performances, but the overall best performance in a match here is probably against O'Sullivan when I beat him on my way to the semis. O'Sullivan probably played as well as he could play for 2 sessions, and I managed to still come through over 3. So that was very pleasing to do that here.
Yeah, I remember watching that. It was amazing. Right, question from Joel D. With 18 ranking tournaments coming up next season, God, and then the Herrenmeisters saying it could go up to 20 the following year. With 18 ranking tournaments coming up next season, how do you guys train and prepare for such a busy schedule? Let's start with you, Mark.
For me, considering there's not a lot of time between events, I still practice hard when I'm at home. I don't really take a lot of time off. I normally take a bit of a break at the start of every season. I think after the World Championships, it's nice to sort of let your hair down and sort of go away from snooker for a while.
Done that. I didn't let your hair down.
You've let it down for good. I think for me, I like taking a break, playing a bit of golf, spend some time with family and friends. I normally I look at the calendar and think which tournaments can I afford to miss, rather than what I want to play in first. I think which ones can I afford to miss and then take it from there. Always start the season quietly, 1 or 2 tournaments here and there. Turn of the year I might maybe miss one more tournament, but other than that I play pretty much everything.
Well, I guess it's important, Alan, that on the one hand you want to play in as many tournaments as possible and win the money and so on, but you have actually got to pace yourself now. The calendar is so hectic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a physical thing. I think it's more a mental thing. It's strange that going back, 6-7 years when we only had a handful of ranking events, which was a nightmare, as Mark would tell you. The actual practice that you do now, I know Mark is a heavy practicer and good on him for it. We all are really, but you don't need to play as much because you do feel a little bit more match tight. So it's just you wouldn't be doing 5 and 6 hours a day religiously, but you'd certainly do 2 or 3, maybe 4, because you just need to keep ticking over. That's different from, as I say, 6, 7 years.
Can I ask you both guys? I mean, if it's 18 tournaments, were you playing kind of 14 of them, or I mean, how do you work your schedule out? I mean, is it just the prize money?
Prize money and length of match for me is a big thing. Like India's probably one I'll not play in. It's a long way to go. Best of 7 matches, and the prize money. Don't get me wrong, if you win the tournament, still great. But other than that, it's not big money on offer. So I'll look at that and definitely think that's one that I can miss.
The only thing I'm worried about, I mean, obviously people might find India not the nicest place to play. I personally used to like playing India. Do you think we should try and get, say, at least probably 10 or 12 of the top 16 playing in every one? I mean, can it not be? We don't want to have countries that all of a sudden say, well, we're not getting Mark Allen playing, we're not getting Alan Manners playing, so we're not going to have it next year. I think that's where we've got to be very careful. I mean, it is a worldwide game now, and we've got to try and get a certain amount of the top 16 playing it in these foreign countries.
I think for me, it's the length of match more than anything. I don't really like the thought of having to go out there for potentially a best of 7 match. If they made a best of 11s, I'm sure most players would go.
Okay. Question as well, just with regards to sort of jet lag and learning how to perform at your best in another country with different conditions. Your first 2 ranking titles came at Wuxi, and then of course, Ricky Walden has won 3 tournaments, or 2 at least, in the Far East. Are there some players who are just naturally adept at being flexible with conditions and jet lag, or is that something you guys consciously think about and work on?
Well, for me, playing abroad, it's completely not what you've just said there. I'm a terrible traveller, terrible sleeper when I'm away. I think the big thing I have in my favour when I go to China is that every match is a win-win. And if I win, I'm in the tournament, and if I get beat, I get to go home. So I think maybe I take a bit of pressure off doing that.
It's just typical snooker statement, and it's snooker player's statement. You always try to look for the positive when you get beat. Oh, well, at least I'm going. And I'm the same, strangely enough. But yeah, I mean, actually in China, the problem that I have with jet lag, and people who don't go, travelling so far afield, it's difficult to understand, but the last 3 times I've been in China, I've not slept for any longer than 3 hours, and you're absolutely shattered.
I think the thing is, you go to sleep and you're shattered. You maybe wake up and you think that was a great sleep, and you've been asleep for an hour and a half.
This is why I've got so much admiration, I'm sure you guys would agree, with all the foreign players, the Thai players and the Chinese players who come over here for probably 75% of the season playing in and around Europe. And I think the great Eddie Charlton years ago said he flew 110 times to this country. I mean, it is very hard. Jet lag is a horrible thing to try and play with.
It's a horrible thing to have in any context, but let alone if you've got to get on a snooker table and produce your best. Couple more. Time is running away with us. So, Mark, you've made changes to your queue recently. Clive Everton was alluding to that in your press conference. How often, this is to any of the 3 of you or all of you, how often do you make changes to a queue, and is that only when you discover a problem?
For me, I don't change anything unless it's forced. There's only one queue like mine, and unfortunately I'd never change it unless it broke, so I don't think anyone really would chop and change with queues too often. You get used to one bit of wood and that's it, but this one was a forced change more than anything. I felt like it was going to break, so I had to get it fixed, but it's all good now.
Strangely enough, I've been using a new queue since I got it in mid-January from a Thai queue maker, Maximus, and I got it. It was nice enough to provide us with it, which I suppose is one of the perks of being a pro. But I got it through the post. I had a look at it, and it just felt right. As Willie will tell you in a minute. If a queue kind of fits you, it's a strange thing. You don't fit a queue fits you. I've always believed, but within about 2 or 3 days, I thought I'm never going to use my old one, and I've been using it ever since. And I think years ago it was different because modern queues now are like iron bars. And they're all very similar. Whereas back in the day, the old Ash queues, there was probably a little bend in each one or whatever else. So but like I say, almost every modern queue now is pretty much the same.
I've got to be honest. I played with the same queue all my life. My mother, amazing enough, went to do a sports shop, spent £3.206 on a maple queue, and I played with it till the day I retired. I mean, amazing. Straight as to die all the way through my career.
Did you ever try any other queues?
No, I didn't, because I just felt comfortable with it. Okay, I wish I could have found a better safety player queue. That was my break mirror queue was great, but my safety player queue wasn't good.
That's brilliant. I always remember Steve Davis coming down. A fire alarm went off. This is a few years ago in Glasgow. Everyone came down in their boxer shorts and their slippers and their dressing gowns. And Steve Davis came out carrying his cue. He said, listen, I couldn't give a monkeys about my wallet. I couldn't give a monkeys about anything in that room. But that cue's coming with me, man. I don't care about anything else. It's really funny. Okay, last question from you guys. From James S. Cheers, James. With such a high standard of qualifying this year, are there players down the rankings that are definitely going to be ones to look out for? And I guess not just here, but going to the future. And an example that pops into my head that maybe is a testament to that is Sam Baird. Great win for Sam over Michael White. And when you think about how overawed he was, understandably, 3 years ago on his debut. I think he only took a couple of frames from Stuart Bingham, and here he is into the second round. He's got a massive game, I think, against Mark Selby. But is that kind of improvement from Sam indicative of the fact that you just can't take any victory for granted now?
I think for Sam, he's been very, very unlucky the last couple of years. He's just missed out on getting into the top 64, which doesn't sound like much, but it means you avoid the top 64 in the first round of every tournament. He's just missed out 2 years in a row and had to then go back to 0 points. You're playing the top players all the time round one, whereas now he's into the top 64, and I really think he'll push on. He's a tremendous scorer when he gets going, very aggressive, and could do a lot of damage here.
Yeah, Sam, the thing for probably punters or snooker fans watching the results this week, the least surprised guys about Sam winning is the players, because we all know how good he is. We see him, 15 or 20 weeks of the year, and he, as Mark says, he's really quick, heavy scorer, gets on with it, good attitude as well. He's got the package, and the thing about the top 64, as Mark was saying, if you're ranked 66 or 67, you'll go through a period of time where you'll get, let's say 5 tournaments in a row. You'll get Mark Allen, Dominic Dale, Neil Robertson, and 2 other top players, and you'll be lucky if you probably only win one of those. So all of a sudden you're out at the first round of almost 4 or 5 tournaments, and you're not making any progress. So for him to get in, he's got a real chance of kicking on now. Yeah.
Willie, question to you, I guess, that every generation likes to think that that theirs is much improved from the past, and we are talking about these guys being so match sharp, and people like Sam Baird coming through against Michael, and Michael Holt beating Neil Robertson. As someone who comes from that era in the 80s, do you recognise that this is the best overall standard there's ever been by quite some margin?
Yeah, I mean, there's more of them now. I wouldn't say that we couldn't compete in today's game. We probably could, but the break building has gone right the way down now. I mean, years ago, the top 16 was so far in advance of every other player. We were miles clear of people ranked in the 30s or 40s. Now it's got a little bit closer. I'm a big advocate, so the conditions are slightly easier. I've got to be perfectly honest. The ball's split great, the cloths are lighter, So I'm an old school man, and I just wish they'd make it a thicker cloth, heavier ball, and let's see how they go on.
Mark Allen's desperate to come in on this.
Those pockets were quite tight that you used to play on. You had to be. They come with hazard signs. Those pockets back then, in case you fell in one.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll have to agree to disagree.
Yeah, that's a debate that can be continued on another occasion. We have taken up far too much of their time. Willie, you've got so much commentary to do over the course of the rest of the championship, the 12 and a half, 13 days we've got left. Thanks very much. Alan, the very best of luck to you against Ali Carter. What a great match that's going to be. And Mark, of course, we still don't know whether you're playing Joe Perry or Kyron Wilson. That's going to be a cracking encounter. Good luck, whoever comes through to face you in the second round. That's it for this chat, but I'm sure we'll be picking it up later in the championship. There is so much great drama still to come. Keep it locked onto the World Snooker website. And hey, you haven't got to wait long for the next live snooker. I reckon that's about 40 minutes time, live on the BBC, live on Eurosport. We've got a great night of entertainment for you. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.
32 of snooker's elite will descend on Sheffield's legendary Crucible Theatre. For 17 days they will battle it out over the green bays. A grueling test of character, accuracy, and pure skill. Hundreds of millions of fans will watch from all over the world, whose grit and determination will prevail. Face to face in a best of 35 frame final, fighting for the title every player dreams of. There will be only one winner. Betfred, proud sponsors of the World Snooker Championship.